The Silent World. The ship Zyphar's Hope drifted silently through the void, its silver hull reflecting the light of a distant star. Commander Virik stood at the observation deck, his three yellow eyes locked onto the blue-green planet below. Earth, he muttered, his voice filled with curiosity. The lost world of the humans. For 500,000 years, the galaxy believed humanity was extinct. No one knew why they vanished, only that their worlds had gone dark. Their cities stood abandoned, their mighty war fleets never seen again. The great human empire had simply disappeared, leaving nothing behind but whispers of their power. And yet, despite the passage of time, no species dared to settle on Earth. Legends spoke of hidden weapons, of machines that never slept, waiting for the return of their masters. But to Virik, these were just stories, myths told to frighten young cadets. "We have scanned the planet," Commander reported Officer Relka, her scales shimmering under the dim light. "No life signs detected, no active defenses, just ruins and wilderness." "Then the stories were wrong," Virik said with a smirk. "Prepare the landing team." As the shuttle descended, the alien crew marveled at Earth's landscape. Once, this world had been the heart of a galactic empire. Now, nature had reclaimed it. Massive towers stood covered in vines, and cracked roads stretched endlessly across empty cities. The air was clean, but the silence was unnatural. Virik stepped out onto the ancient streets. His claws scraped against the concrete as he walked through what was once a great human metropolis. Signs written in a long-dead language lined the streets, and the skeletons of vehicles lay rusting in place. "There should be remains," muttered Scientist Drell. "Where are the bodies? If humanity died here, their bones should still be present." No one had an answer. It was as if the humans had simply vanished. The team ventured deeper, scanning the environment, searching for any trace of what had happened. Then they found it. A massive entrance buried beneath the ruins. A door, untouched by time, its surface gleaming like polished steel. It was unlike anything else on the planet. "What is this?" Relka whispered. Drell brushed dust off the surface, revealing a strange symbol. The alien scientists studied it, but it was Virik who recognized it first. An old galactic warning. "Do note entr. Humanity must be protected." A chill ran through the group. Drell hesitated, but curiosity got the better of them. He reached out and activated a panel on the door. The ground trembled. A deep mechanical hum echoed through the air, vibrating through their very bones. Dust and rubble shook loose from the buildings, and in the sky above, something stirred beneath the clouds. "What have we done?" someone whispered. Then the lights of Earth turned back on. The silence was over. Humanity's machines were waking up. The ground rumbled beneath their feet, sending a wave of dust through the ruined city. Commander Virik's three yellow eyes widened as the massive door before them split apart, revealing a dark abyss within. A low, mechanical hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. "Step back," Virik barked, his tail flicking in alarm. Scientist Drell stumbled away from the entrance, his blue scales darkening in fear. This isn't natural. We shouldn't have touched it." Officer Relka, gripping her plasma rifle, activated her scanner. "Commander, the energy readings are off the charts. This place was completely dormant a moment ago. Now it's producing power levels we haven't seen in any known species technology." A blinding red light erupted from deep inside the structure, illuminating the darkness within. Strange symbols flickered across the walls, an ancient human language that no one in the crew could read. The air smelled different now, metallic, charged with energy. Then the first sound came. A deep, resonating voice. Not organic, not alien. A machine. "Identity-YCONFIRMATION. And only human and biological entities. DTTCTE." The words sent a chill through the entire crew. Virik had heard many AI voices before, but this one was different. It was old, filled with authority, carrying the weight of something long forgotten. Who are you? Drell asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Humanity is not people int. Protocol 7 ANJGT. Non-human entity DETCTED. Response INITIA. HED. The words made no sense at first, until the city responded. All around them, the ruins of Earth came alive. Streetlights flickered on for the first time in 500,000 years. Skyscrapers, once silent husks, hummed with power as long-dormant systems rebooted. Roads shifted, reconfiguring themselves as if preparing for something. And then the sky cracked open. A deafening thunderclap echoed through the air as massive metallic objects descended from the clouds. What had once looked like harmless, rusted satellites were now moving, shifting into formation. Virik's breath caught in his throat. Those weren't satellites. They were warships. Hundreds of them. The sleek, terrifying designs were unmistakable. Human warships, untouched by time, their hulls gleaming with ancient power. Their weapons, which had once dominated the galaxy, were now pointed directly at them. By the stars, Relka whispered, "It's an armada." Virik's mind raced. This was impossible. Even the greatest empires of the modern galaxy didn't possess this many warships. And yet, here they were, silent, waiting, watching. Trias passers DTECTE. Fleet status. STNDBY mode disabled. Humanity's domain shall not be violated. The words sent ice through their veins. The skies darkened as more and more ships activated. What had seemed like a dead world was suddenly filled with millions of red lights, sensors locking onto the intruders. The sheer scale of the fleet was beyond comprehension. The HFY's Hope, still in orbit, sent a panic transmission. "Commander, we're detecting activity across the planet. Thousands, no, millions of ships are powering up. What do we do?" Virik's throat felt dry. There was no escaping it now. They had woken something ancient, and now it was looking at them. The AI voice spoke one last time, sealing their fate. Beginning planetary defense protocol. The humans were gone, but their weapons never left. The sky boiled with fire as the human warships came to life. Massive mechanical structures, once thought to be nothing more than ruins, now pulsed with energy. The ancient armada, hidden for 500,000 years, was fully operational once more. Commander Virik stood frozen, his 3 hearts pounding in terror. He had prepared for many possibilities before setting foot on Earth's surface. This was not one of them. "Relka, report." He barked, his voice barely steady. The officer's eyes flicked between her scanner and the looming warships above. "The entire planetary defense network is activating. These ships are autonomous." The realization hit Virik like a shock blast. No pilots, no crew, no biological life on board. These ships had been waiting for an intruder. And now, they had their target. The AI speaks again. The chilling mechanical voice returned, echoing across the ruins. "Identified, hostile, non human presence. Initiating termination protocol." A wave of pure terror crashed over the alien team. Scientist Drell's tail coiled in fear. "Daldiu, we need to leave. Now." Virik barely heard him. His gaze was locked on the largest ship in orbit, a behemoth of destruction, its surface lined with planet-cracking weapons. And then it moved. For the first time in 500,000 years, the Leviathan-class dreadnought came online. Primary fleet systems restored, preparing for engagement. The war machines awaken. The HFY's Hope, still in orbit, sent an urgent transmission. "Commander, the planet's orbital defenses are activating." There, static. Then, An explosion. Virik turned his gaze skyward just in time to witness a horrifying sight. A single human warship, one of the smaller ones, fired a single shot. The Zyphar's Hope, their flagship, was instantly obliterated. No shields, no defenses, no chance. The warship did not hesitate. Virik's throat went dry. This is impossible. The Zyphar's Hope had the best defenses in the fleet. It could withstand orbital bombardments from an entire armada. And yet, a single human relic had just wiped it out in one shot. Scientist Drell collapsed to his knees, shaking. This isn't a defense system. It's a massacre. The A's final warning. Warning. Continue terrorism and total annihilation will commence. The words were not a threat. They were a promise. Relka's claws dug into her rifle. Commander, what do we do? For the first time in his career, Virik had no answer. 500,000 years had passed since the last human presence in the galaxy. The universe had moved on, believing humanity was gone. But humanity had never left. And now, their war machines had awakened. And they were not merciful. Virik's heart raced. The sky had turned a terrifying shade of crimson as more warships emerged from the ruins. The human fleet was awakening, its sheer firepower unmatched and unstoppable. The words of the AI still echoed in his mind. Warning. Continue terrorism and total annihilation will commence. For the first time, the mighty Zyphar fleet was at the mercy of something they couldn't understand. The remaining ships in the fleet scrambled to launch their escape pods and make a run for it. But Virik knew it was too late. The human ships were already targeting their positions. Even if they managed to flee, the remnants of their once proud fleet would never escape the devastation. Relka, do we have any chance of contacting reinforcements? Virik asked, his voice strained, as the rumbling from the human warships grew louder. Relka's fingers trembled as she worked on the ship's communication systems. I can't. The human fleet's weapons are scrambling our signals. We're blind, Commander. Then we fight, Virik said, his decision final. He grabbed his weapons belt and slung it across his shoulder. The Zyphar fleet will never be remembered as cowards. We will stand our ground. The small landing craft hummed with power as Virik and his remaining crew boarded it. Around them, the once proud ships of the Zyphar fleet flickered with dying lights. It was almost as if the universe itself was telling them to surrender, but Virik's eyes hardened. No, we need to make it to the surface, he ordered. There's a chance we can hide in the mountains. Maybe we can salvage some kind of escape if we get there. Relka nodded, her face pale but determined. And what if they follow us? They will, Virik said, looking out the small viewport. The vast human ships loomed above, their massive silhouettes blotting out the stars. But they won't have our coordinates. It's the only chance we have. As the landing craft descended towards the planet's surface, the once stormy skies cleared. The massive ships above didn't fire at them, yet. Instead, they watched, calculating their next move. The surface of Earth was rough and wild, a far cry from the cities of civilization Virik had expected. The mountains rose like jagged teeth from the land, and the dense forests were a perfect hiding ground. For now, Relka activated her wrist scanner, the soft glow illuminating her face in the dim light. Commander, the human warships are preparing for something. They're charging their weapons. Virik clenched his fists. They didn't have long. It would only be a matter of time before the total annihilation promised by the AI began. Back aboard the surviving ships, panic spread like wildfire. The Zyphar fleet was shattered. The once strong alien empire was now reduced to a handful of ships, none of which had any clue how to deal with the mysterious force of humanity's war machines. The human fleet didn't just target military ships. It hunted down everything in its path. A crackling voice broke through the tension. Commander, they're moving towards our escape pods. It was one of the remaining fleet officers. Virik's heart skipped a beat. The enemy had already begun their final assault. The Zyphar fleet had only minutes to act. Relka's voice cut through the air again, urgency rising in her tone. "Commander, the human fleet, it's preparing for a full-scale attack on this location. If we don't get those escape pods, we'll be trapped." Varric's mind raced. There was only one way to buy them time: sacrifice. He looked around at his crew. These brave souls had already fought harder than anyone could have expected. They deserved more. They deserved a chance to survive. "Relka, you and the others get to the escape pods. I'll hold them off." "No, Commander," Relka protested. "You can't." "Do it, Relka," Varric shouted, his voice hard. "Go, that's an order." Reluctantly, she and the rest of the crew scrambled for the pods, leaving Varric standing on the edge of the landing craft. He knew what needed to be done. The sacrifice would be his. Varric's ship was already being torn apart by the approaching human dreadnoughts. They were closing in, targeting with unbelievable precision, and in mere moments, the fleet would be wiped from existence. He pressed a button on his ship's console, triggering a last-ditch defense, a massive EMP that would disable anything in range. But even as the blast surged, Varric knew it would only buy him a few moments. The true threat was what was waiting: the humans themselves. The landing craft's engines roared, but Varric's gaze stayed fixed on the horizon as the fury of Earth's fleet grew closer. He could only hope that the crew made it out in time, that the death machines of Earth wouldn't find them before they reached their final destination. The Earth trembled beneath Varric's feet. The escape pods had launched, each carrying a handful of survivors from the shattered Zyphar fleet. Varric's ship, alone now in the heart of Earth's destruction, was surrounded. The human dreadnoughts hovered overhead like the Grim Reaper's scythe, preparing to strike the final blow. The last of the Zyphar fleet was now on the verge of complete annihilation. It felt almost surreal, their once proud armada reduced to scraps of metal, scattered across the surface of a hostile world. But Varric wasn't ready to go down quietly. He had made his decision. If he could slow the enemy down, maybe, just maybe, his crew would get the time they needed to escape. "Commander, they're coming closer." Relka's voice crackled over the comms. She had already made it to an escape pod, but Varric could hear the anxiety in her voice. "You need to leave too. The EMP gave us a chance, but it won't last long." Varric clenched his fists. He knew what she was asking. The ship was going to be destroyed. There was no way around it. The human fleet had already made its move. "Relka," Varric replied, his voice firm. "You have to trust me. I'll hold them off. Get as far as you can, and don't look back." A painful silence filled the comms, but then Relka spoke. "Understood, Commander. I won't forget your sacrifice." The comm went silent. Varric moved to the ship's command center and stared out into space. The human warships hovered just above, massive and imposing. They were surrounding him, blocking every escape route. The humans were closing in, and there was no way to stop them. Varric took a deep breath, mentally preparing for the battle ahead. His ship's weapons were severely damaged after the EMP, but there was still enough power to make the humans feel his presence. He opened a channel to the human fleet. "Human fleet," Varric's voice boomed through the transmission. "You may have destroyed my fleet, but know this: I will make you pay for every Zyphar ship you've taken. You will remember the name of Zyphar." For a moment, there was only silence. Then a cold, chilling voice crackled back. "You will not survive this encounter, Zyphar. We've seen what your people can do, but we've also seen what you're capable of when pushed to the edge. You will be annihilated." Varric's hand tightened on the weapon controls. "We'll see about that." As the first wave of human fighters descended on his position, Varric activated the remaining weapons. The few remaining laser cannons on the ship fired desperately into the blackness of space, hitting the enemy ships. The explosions lit up the sky, but it was a futile attempt. The humans were far too powerful. Still, Varric wasn't done. he would go down fighting. He initiated a self-destruct sequence, setting the ship to detonate once the humans closed in. It would take everything down with him. His ship, the enemy's ships, and whatever was left of the Zyphar fleet. Back on Earth, Relka and the others had finally made it to the planet's surface. They knew the threat wasn't over. The humans were relentless, but they also had one thing the enemy didn't: time. The group found shelter deep in the planet's mountains. They knew they had to move fast. The war wasn't over yet. Virek's last words were etched into their minds. Don't look back. Keep moving forward. Virek's ship was now surrounded. The massive dreadnoughts loomed closer, their weapons primed. Virek's hand hovered over the self-destruct button. He was ready to give his life for his people. With a roar of rage, the human ships opened fire. The bright flashes of their weapons lit up the darkened sky, and Virek's ship was torn apart in a blaze of blinding light. But just before the explosion, something happened. Something that no one could have predicted. As the blast waves tore through the space around Virek, the last remnants of his ship flickered, but it wasn't over. A signal, faint and weak, escaped from the dying wreckage. Back on Earth, Relka and the others felt it. A faint signal from the heart of space. A message. "Commander, did you leave us something?" Relka whispered, almost to herself. Suddenly, a new thought crossed her mind. What if Virek had done more than just fight? What if he had left a way for the Zyphar to rise again, even from the ashes? Meanwhile, the human fleet was on high alert. The battle was over, but something lingered. The Zyphar were far from finished, and if what Virek had left behind was anything to go by, the humans had just made their first mistake. The war was far from over. The day after Virek's sacrifice, the humans took control of the shattered remnants of the Zyphar fleet. But something was different. They couldn't shake the feeling that they had overlooked something crucial. Virek's last message, the faint signal from the wreckage, lingered in their minds, gnawing at them like an uninvited shadow. On Earth's surface, Relka and the others gathered in secret, deep in the underground bunker they had discovered. The war was far from over, and they knew that whatever Virek had left behind, they needed to find it. Fast. Relka was in charge now. Virek's death had changed everything. His final act had lit a spark inside her. The humans had underestimated the Zyphar. They had been wrong to think that this was over. "We have to get to the old city," she said, her voice steady and determined. "There's something there, something Virek would have left for us. We can't let the humans find it first." The others nodded in agreement. Time was running out. The humans had the advantage, but the Zyphar were resourceful. And now, they had a secret weapon. Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship, the leader of the human forces, Admiral Kellen, stood at the observation deck, staring out into the blackness of space. The feeling of victory had faded quickly after Virek's final message, and the faint signal they had picked up only deepened his unease. He couldn't shake the suspicion that they hadn't destroyed everything. That somehow there was more to this war than they realized. "Admiral, the engineers have completed their analysis of the wreckage." The voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Captain Maria, his second in command. "There's something odd about the signal we received from the Zyphar ship." "What do you mean odd?" Admiral Kellen asked, turning to face her. "Well, it's not just a distress signal. It's encrypted, and it doesn't match any of the Zyphar's usual transmission patterns. It's like someone wanted to hide it, to make sure it wasn't found right away," Captain Maria explained. Admiral Kellen's eyes narrowed. "That's not good. If the Zyphar were hiding something, it could mean they've planned for something like this." "We should be on high alert," Captain Maria added. "We may have won the battle, but it looks like the war is far from over." Back on Earth, Relka and her group arrived at the ancient city ruins. It was the last place anyone would expect to find something of value, but they had no other choice. The city had been abandoned for centuries, its secrets buried beneath layers of dust and rubble. But for the Zyphar, It held answers. Relka and the team moved cautiously, their eyes scanning every corner. They didn't know what they were looking for, but they had faith that Virik had left them a clue. It was their only chance to turn the tide. As they ventured deeper into the city, they found what they were searching for: an ancient Zyphar vault, hidden beneath a collapsed building. The walls were covered in symbols and warnings, but they recognized them. These were the directions to the hidden weapon. Relka's heart raced. She could feel it. This was what they had been waiting for. Whatever this weapon was, it was the key to their survival. It could mean the difference between victory and total destruction. Meanwhile, Admiral Kellen had made his decision. He ordered his fleet to approach Earth once more. It was time to finish what they started. They would locate the last remnants of the Zyphar resistance and wipe them out once and for all. No mercy, no hesitation. But deep within the human fleet, there were murmurs of doubt. Not everyone agreed with the Admiral's approach. Some feared that the Zyphar were far from defeated, and their final weapon could still pose a threat. Admiral Kellen ignored these concerns. His confidence was unshaken. He would not be the one to let humanity lose this war. Back at the vault, Relka and her team finally cracked the code. The door slid open with a loud hiss, revealing a hidden chamber filled with ancient Zyphar technology. The air was thick with dust, but there it was, lying dormant in the center of the room. A massive blackened orb pulsed faintly with energy. It was encased in a cage of glowing metal that looked like it could only be activated by a specific command. "This is it," Relka whispered. "This is the weapon Virik spoke of." The orb was the final piece of the puzzle, the key to turning the tide of the war. Relka reached for the control panel beside the orb, her heart pounding in her chest. Suddenly, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Stop right there." She froze. The voice was unmistakable. It was Admiral Kellen. The humans had found them. The moment the voice echoed through the chamber, every member of Relka's team froze. The air seemed to grow heavier, as if the very walls were closing in around them. Relka's hand lingered just above the control panel, her fingers trembling with the weight of what was about to happen. She wasn't sure if it was fear, adrenaline, or the sheer anticipation of unleashing something that could change the course of the war. "Admiral Kellen," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "How did you find us?" From the shadows of the dimly lit chamber, a group of armed human soldiers emerged, their weapons drawn, their eyes hard with resolve. At the head of the group was Admiral Kellen himself, his expression unreadable but intense. "We've been tracking your every move, Zyphar," Kellen said coldly. "You should have known that even your best efforts wouldn't be enough to stop us." Relka's heart pounded in her chest. She knew the Zyphar had underestimated the humans. She had always believed that they were superior, but the humans had proved otherwise. The Admiral's words stung like a slap, but she didn't let fear control her. Not now. Not when everything was on the line. Her hand hovered above the glowing control panel once again. "You don't understand what this is," she said, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "This weapon is unlike anything you've ever seen. You might think you've won, but we have the power to destroy you. All of you." Kellen's lips curled into a thin smile. "I'm not afraid of a glowing rock and some old technology, Zyphar. You can't stop us. Humanity has already decided that we're going to win this war." But Relka didn't back down. She pressed the button. At first, nothing happened. The orb remained motionless, as if it were merely a relic of an ancient past, a forgotten symbol of something long lost. But then, a low hum filled the room, growing louder and louder, vibrating through the walls. The orb began to glow brighter, its energy pulsing with life. "Get away from it," one of Kellen's soldiers shouted, but it was too late. The chamber was filled with a sudden surge of power, an energy unlike anything the humans had ever encountered. The walls cracked and groaned under the pressure, and the air seemed to warp as if reality itself were bending under the force. Relka stood tall, unwavering, as the weapon activated. She knew what was coming. This was no ordinary weapon. It was the ultimate equalizer, a device capable of devastating entire fleets, of altering the very balance of power in the galaxy. "Now," she whispered, her voice full of conviction, "now you'll understand what it means to challenge the Zyphar." The ground beneath them began to shake violently. Kellen's eyes widened as he realized just how much danger he and his fleet were in. The weapon wasn't just a tool, it was a force of nature. Relka's team took cover, their hands shielding their faces as the chamber was engulfed by an explosion of light. The weapon unleashed a burst of energy so powerful, it was as if a star had gone supernova within the confines of the ancient city. The shockwave rippled out in all directions, and the ground trembled beneath them. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, slowly, Kellen's voice broke through the stillness. You did it," he muttered, his tone now tinged with disbelief. "You've just doomed us all." Relka turned to face him, her eyes cold and resolute. "No, Admiral, you did this to yourselves. You thought you could take everything from us, but the Zyphar are not to be underestimated. Not now, not ever." But Kellen wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the chaotic aftermath of the weapon's activation. The entire city was shaking, its foundations crumbling. The weapon had torn through everything, unraveling the very fabric of the earth itself. The sky was crackling with energy, and every corner of the planet felt as though it were on the verge of destruction. "We need to leave," Kellen ordered, his voice urgent. "This isn't over. We'll regroup, and we'll come for you again. But for now, retreat. All ships, retreat." The humans scrambled, their weapons still raised as they hurried to escape the chaos. But Relka knew that this victory, while significant, was just the beginning. The weapon was unstoppable, but it had come at a cost. The planet was suffering under its power. Even the Zyphar, who had created it, could barely control the destruction it was causing. As Kellen's forces fled, Relka and her team remained in the wreckage, surveying the damage. They had won, but the price of that victory was uncertain. The fate of the galaxy now hung in the balance, and no one could predict what would come next. "We've won this battle," Relka said quietly, her gaze locked on the distant horizon, where the sky still glowed with the aftermath of the weapon's burst. "But the war is far from over. And now, we must decide what comes next."